Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri.
And Amy Cornell.
And we are so excited. First off, I want to mention again that we have the, you can now text us with your show ideas, with your questions. Text the word podcast to 888-402-8940. And I'll repeat that number at the end of the show again if you missed it. So I want to start. So I'm really excited about this episode. Amy this was one of Amy's gems, one of her ideas about pre-orders. But I want to start out, and I'm so excited, Amy. I have the best news ever. Are you ready?
Lay it on me. Everybody
Oprah,
knows, like,
what? Oprah has invited me to be part of her book club.
Oh, finally. You know, we've been waiting for that email for years.
No, because my books are so appropriate for her book club. So listen, here's the deal. Oprah, somebody wrote me the other day from quote unquote Oprah's book club. We had such a good laugh about this. Actually, the entire team, we had such a good laugh about this. And not only did they write from a Gmail address, because of course Oprah uses Gmail, Oprah's book club uses Gmail, but they also got the name of my book wrong. So they said, we want to invite your book marketing expert to be part of Oprah's book club.
You feel so special?
I felt so seen, right? And special. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So here's the deal, people. It's out there. There's some guy writing, and I actually wrote him back because I'm like, oh, I'm going to challenge this person. And I wrote him back, and I'm like, and I wanted to get details and costs and everything like that. I should forward that over to you. Like, how much does it cost? Everything. So I asked him, I'm like, so is Oprah going to read the book?
Right. Exactly. Do I get her feedback personally?
And I get her personal feedback. Is she going to show up at my house with like a basket of, muffins, and we can talk about my book? And I also said, are you going to send decals that I can use on my book, the Oprah's Book Club pick, right?
Right.
I got no response to that either. So you're basically just, and, I got to tell you, I mean, really, we had an author one time use, as seen in O Magazine on their website. And for whatever reason, and this actually was legitimately, like, this author was featured in O Magazine. But for whatever reason, I guess the verbiage was wrong or something. And Harpo Studios, they came bearing down on this author. So let me just say this about that. They do not mess around. So
yeah,
the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to forward this over to somebody at Harpo. I don't know, maybe their legal division or something. Like, here you go, have fun. I mean, I'm sure like they get 9 billion of these, but you really have to do your due diligence, people. We've done a show on it. Enough said. I'll leave it there, but I just thought that was really like.
I know. And it's perfect timing, Penny, because we had a client this week send something my way and said, is this legitimate? Like, they're not asking for a ton of money and all this stuff. And I said the same thing. I said, honestly, I would question anything that comes to you from a free email service.
Yes.
End of story. If that's the case, I would move on because you're potentially getting involved in something messy or very expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly. And, it's a little, yeah. So that's my really good news for the week. So you're probably going to have to run with the podcast alone now because I'm going to be super famous because I'm going to be at Oprah's Book Club.
Yeah.
The Reese Witherspoon Book Club is going to be next. That's going to happen. So
right. Exactly. Just they'll be lining up.
They'll be lining up after they review my book, Marketing Expert, which is not even a book. It's just so bizarre. Love the attention to detail. Thanks. So anyway, yeah. So just be on the lookout. All right. So let's get down to the show. Pre-order. Okay. So, a lot of times authors who like first, and this show is if you are a first-time author or if you have a really minimal following, maybe you even have 2 books out and you don't, nobody seemed to be paying attention to your first one. You're like, oh my gosh, now I have a second one. we're talking pre-order strategies. We're talking pre-order strategies for you if you feel like you don't have a base, not much of a base, or you're literally just starting out. And part of the reason why we wanted to do this is because I know, and I'll let Amy speak to this in a minute, we get a lot of authors who are like, I can't really do a pre-order because nobody knows who I am.
Right.
Right. I mean, we hear this a lot, don't we?
Yes. But we so appreciate that there are a lot of you out there that know you need to be doing something for your book.
Yeah.
You know, that you can't just, it doesn't just show up on Amazon and become an instant success. And once you put in all that hard work, you know, Penny, you know, immediately, like you're ready and amped up. Like the brainstorming we do for your book releases is so exciting and so fun. And it's so, you feel like you deserve that after you've put so much hard work into your book, but it does get very challenging because a lot of the advice and recommendations out there really only make sense when you do have a big following to tap into, right?
Yeah.
And then it seems like, well, that's super easy. I'm, you know, yeah, of course I'd do a pre-order if I had 5,000 people on my newsletter list. Like, yeah, duh, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think that's really where that's where the challenge is that authors they feel like that things like a pre-order strategy are exclusively for authors who have really big followings. Now, one thing that I want to mention, and this was a show that we did in June, and it was about brand marketing. So the reason that I want to mention it here is because when authors, sometimes we'll get authors like 6 months out and, before their book launches, like, what can I do now? And that's brand marketing, right?
Mhm.
So go and look for that show because that's not what we're talking about here. This show goes under is under the assumption that you've done this brand marketing, that you started to get your feet wet. So you're not doing it in the 30-day pre-order window. Like, you're not like, okay, well, now I need to get serious because my book's coming out in 30 days. No. You've already done some of that work. You have your social channels, and maybe you don't have a big following yet. That's fine, like whatever, but you've already started kind of that work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Days is important, right, Penny? Because
you what?
And the 30 days is kind of that sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
In terms of
Yeah.
how long you want to spend promoting the release of your book, because the reality is, again, unless, like Penny, you already said, unless you have a built-in return buyer network, from previous releases, you can really only expect people to pay attention for so long without the book being available.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to drag people along for months and months and months if they don't already know you. If you're a brand new author, if your platform is relatively minimal right now, you really have to hit that sweet spot of getting them excited about it, but then making sure that within that 30-day mark or so, you can deliver a book to them, or they can purchase that book and start reading and dive in.
Right, exactly. Yeah, long pre-orders. I mean, I think long pre-orders work if you have a name and you have a following and all the things, but the majority of readers are not going to wait for a book, especially from an author that they don't know. So 30-day window is a really, really good idea. Now, the first thing, okay, so let's talk about some ideas around some of the things that you can be doing during that 30 days, right? So going off the premise that you have a minimal or no following, lead with content that people are already searching for. So a lot of times authors want to kind of reinvent the wheel, right? They want to try to bring readers to their story. And the readers don't know your story and they don't know who you are. And so what we're suggesting here is that you want to go after a content space that already has interest, right? So for example, and we'll take these kind of in order, and we have examples for everyone, so you all will feel included. There's no exception. Everybody can do this. Like a thriller author, you might create a short video or even if video is not really your thing, you can create some images. 3 chilling true crimes you've never heard of that inspired my novel, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which I actually think I love that idea because Amy and I are both huge true crime fans. Like, we're so interested in true crime. Like, that would reel me in.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. You're piggybacking on what's already popular, essentially, is
Yeah.
the short version of this.
Yeah.
So, and I love the romance one. This was great. Why enemies to lovers is the best trope. So I love that you're already like presenting like this is an opinion, because that people love to give their opinion. So you're already kind of like encouraging people to respond, right? It's kind of that psychological. And then this example says, and how my book adds a twist. So how fun is that? You're already telling people this is an enemies to lovers story. So people that already like that are instantly like, I like that. I already read that. This is, you know what I mean? And then you say how my book adds a twist. That what an awesome premise to say, like, I've got something new to add to this. And that is very intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's very intriguing because, again, enemies to lovers or secret baby or cowboy romance or whatever, those are really big subgenres in romance, and readers really love those. So a fantasy author, I love this idea. The world building mistake I almost made writing my book. I think that's something that if you are a reader of fantasy, um, I think it's a very like world building is a very intriguing concept because you're literally like building this world with all of its nuances and whatever. Um, and I think that gets to be that could really be something that readers I think would be interested in, frankly.
Right. And they have very strong opinions about it too. So I think when you present the idea that I almost made this mistake, somebody that's a true fan is going to want to know if they agree with you or not, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you could do the same thing for like if you've written historical fiction, right?
Right.
The historical or for historical fiction, and I know that's not on our uh show sheet, but for historical fiction, you could say something like, this is a little piece of history that I actually never knew existed, right?
Right.
And I remember a book, and now I'm going to cite this book, and I can't remember and it was the zookeeper's wife, actually, and I can't remember the author, but I loved the book. And this book was actually born out of this was a World War II historical. This book was actually born out of a piece of history that the author stumbled on, right? Accidentally,
Cool.
right? And decided to write this book. And then it became a movie and all this other stuff. And I got to tell you that when I'm not a huge historical reader, even though we've done a lot with World War II markets and stuff like that, which I love, that's the little factoid that actually pulled me into the book. I was like,
that makes sense. Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it is really, really, really cool. I love that so much. And then our nonfiction one. So, the nonfiction can be the tip. So nonfiction's a little, I don't want to say easier, but it is kind of.
I was going to say the same thing.
It really, you can speak to the pain points that your reader is, that are going to target your reader, whatever those are, right? Just to make sure, obviously you're going to mention your book, but it always comes at the end, right? Giving your followers something like, but give them actually, I really recommend for the nonfiction folks, I know this is going to sound painful, give them helpful tips. Right. Don't just say, my book cracks the code on.
Oh, I hate that. Sorry.
No, I know, right? Like, I really hate that. And I got to tell you, Instagram has turned into such a clickbait.
Yes.
Have you noticed that?
Yes, so much of it is, and that's why the comment section is amazing, because a lot of people be like, here's what it says, don't waste your time.
Yeah, I know. The comments are so don't be this clickbaity person. Instead, offering tips. Here's the secret for y'all nonfiction authors, and as I am also a nonfiction author. When you give people tips, and you give them ideas, you're like, psychologically, it's not like they go like, oh, I have this tip and I don't have to buy your book now.
No.
They wonder like, well, what else does this person know that I don't know? What else does this person know that I need to learn? So that's why I think I recommend, give out tips, meet them where they hurt. so to speak. Right.
Exactly.
Do you want to take you want to kick off the next one?
Sure. This other one, and we've discussed this before. We've talked about networking with other authors. It's such an untapped opportunity. I
For
think
sure.
it's still like I'm waiting for the author collab to be the new hot thing in publishing because it's so amazing and it's mutually beneficial. So I really am shocked that you don't see more of it. But this is, this strategy is called borrowed audience. So essentially what you're doing is you're partnering with people who already have small but active audiences. And this is not going after the big fish. This is not your breakout moment. Let's just say that right now. You know what I mean? But this is a quality over quantity moment. Plus, a lot of these other authors and thought leaders are going to be in the same boat as you, where they're trying to build. You know what I mean? So they are hungry for unique, interesting, inspiring content that kind of takes some of the pressure off of them too. So that is where, you know what I mean? This is where this is mutually beneficial. So our first example, I love this so much. A cozy mystery author writes a guest post for a baking blogger about 10 recipes that inspired my character's cafe. Like, how fun is that? And how creative, right?
Yeah. I love that. That is such a cute idea. It really
I know. And it's one of those things that you would never normally think of because it's so easy to get those blinders on that everything is like, has to be only books and only books, but it's like, that's not the case. Whether you write fiction or nonfiction, the opportunities you can create don't have to be solely book centric. You know what I mean? Think outside of the box.
Right. Exactly. Kind of like the next one. So, a fantasy debut author doing a quick Instagram live with a smaller bookstagram influencer, right? So maybe 3,000 followers to talk about their favorite magical system or magical whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think could be really fun because, again, your readers, that's something that your readers are really going to love. So the takeaway from this is, and we're going to talk about nonfiction in just a second, but the takeaway from this is that small but active. So don't get discouraged by, well, they don't have, 50,000 followers, 3,000 followers, whatever, it's totally fine. So small but mighty, right? And if you've done your brand marketing, you already know these people. So now is a good time to reach out to them. For nonfiction, guest content on, for in doing local, guest content on LinkedIn, offering guest content is a really good. And again, you don't have to have huge numbers.
No, and not like, what do they call them? Carousels on Instagram.
Yeah. Carousels. I love that.
A tips carousel on social. And, I think a lot of times local always leans into events or things like that, Penny, or like a news piece. But it's amazing how many opportunities there are potentially to collaborate with local businesses in other ways. You know what I mean? So if you're writing a book for a specific industry, think about ways that you can benefit some local businesses that are in that same industry. You know what I mean? Maybe it's getting into their newsletter, or maybe it's getting like a mention on their social, just to say like, here's a local resource that's in the same industry as we are. They've released a book. Like, what a great target audience, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that definitely is a great target audience for sure. Yeah. The next one, do you want to kick off the next one too? The next one kind of feeds off of the borrowed audiences idea, which I really love.
I know. So I think the first one you're talking about, you're still kind of, so it's interesting. They kind of build. So the first one was definitely all about them, right? Like the content people are already searching for. You're really, really focused on basically connecting yourself to something else that's already going on, and it's not as heavy on your book. And then the borrowed audience is you're showing up in those spaces and kind of showing what you have to offer. And now the secret preview, I think, is where it starts leaning more into your book specifically, because like before, Penny, when you mentioned like, yes, you mentioned your book, but really what you're leading with is that I have this to contribute that you're already interested in. So I think, this kind of builds into, now we're going into the stuff that is a little more book centric, which is what some of you might be thinking, like, when do I get to talk about my book?
Right,
So
exactly.
this is that. So, an example would be sharing a first chapter or an excerpt with another thought leader, another author that, again, we're looking at like audiences. These are mutually beneficial. And this is something that you should offer to do for their next release. Keep that in mind. Or their next, if you're nonfiction, maybe their next event, something like that, something that's mutually beneficial. But this is where you start to share a chapter or an excerpt in their newsletter, things like that, where now you're really introducing your book to these people versus just introducing yourself and the concept of a book. Like, this is really hitting it a little bit harder.
Yeah. I agree with that. I like that so much. I also think that, again, if you've done your brand marketing stuff, you already probably know who you want to cross pollinate with, right? And for nonfiction, you can swap newsletter features with another nonfiction author in your genre. But because the other piece of it, though, too, is that, and this is very true for pretty much any genre. If somebody buys a book, we know this is true for self-help, right? So if you buy one book on self-help, you're probably going to buy 50, right? So
I love
you're
it.
not right. So you're not stealing this nonfiction author's audience by, putting something in their newsletter and they're putting something in your newsletter. The readers are probably going to buy both your books. I mean, that's just right. That's just
right. This is definitely the collaborative element of our tips. You know what I mean? This is the most collaborative. The one previously was more like, let me take some of your, some of the load off of all the content you're creating because I can add to that. That's great. But this is really where the mutual benefits come in, and it's really collaborative. And what I love about this one too is that you're really setting yourself up for potentially long-term collaborations.
Exactly. And if a newsletter feature feels daunting, like if you say, well, you know what, Penny, I'd really like to feature them in my newsletter, but I only have 5 people and 4 of them are family, like who've signed up for my newsletter, doesn't really feel authentic to tell them, oh yeah, I'm going to run you in my newsletter. Yay, us. Then maybe start with something smaller, right? Start with something that you feel is a little bit more in line with like what that you can really reciprocate on, right? So maybe say, look, I'd love to do a newsletter feature. I still have to build my newsletter audience, and like maybe we'll do yours in 6 months, or even offer to do some kind of a swap when they have their next book coming out. Right?
Yes.
So those are the other things, because one of the things that this will do for you too is it helps you to create these relationships. So during the brand marketing time, during that time when you didn't have anything to promote, you're getting to know these people, and now you're really networking with them, which is great. And the majority of times, I mean, look, if somebody offers to feature my book in their newsletter, even though it's been out for a little bit, I'll definitely jump on it. But I get more excited when I have a new book coming out. If somebody says, oh, I want to feature in my newsletter, I'm like, oh, yay, us, let's do it now. So that's another reason why, you may want to say that I'll help you promote your next book or something. And that gives you a little bit more time to build your newsletter list. Okay. So, 30-day reader hook challenge. Now, are we suggesting here that we want them to post something every day for 30 days? What do you think?
I mean, I think that's probably a bit overkill.
That's a lot, right?
I think it really also depends on how creative you can be and how much, useful, interesting, fun content you can come up with. Because I think if there's value in it, then it makes sense to post more frequently. Otherwise, like maybe if it's once a week leading up and that's all you can do, I think great, just make it stand out. And this is just the difference here is what we're encouraging you to do. Instead of just a countdown where you say, hey, remember my book? Hey, remember my book, over and over again. And you're just saying like, hey, remember my book's coming out. You're taking it a step above and you're tying the countdown into value added content. So if you loved this title, again, like Penny keeps saying, you should know who your competing titles are, what authors your readers are already reading and loving. So if you like this, then you'll love my book. You know what I mean? Like this is more about, this is quality over quantity. Mention a character. This side character is based on my college roommate who always wore mismatched socks. Like how freaking specific is that? But it also shows it shows that you're genuine. You know what I mean? You are really trying to make this an experience for the reader. And it shows so much thought and effort. You know how they always say, Penny, I think this is something that's big in like stand up, which I would never do, but I could see you doing it. They always say that it's really important. The details are important because things are more believable when there's details, right?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
So I think this is when it's time to let people in a little bit and share. You don't have to share personal details of your life, but where details matter. And it shows that you're really thinking about them and their experience and that you've put a lot of thought into the content that you're creating. And it absolutely makes a difference. It totally hits different versus just a post saying, buy my book, because people see that all the time. And it just in one ear, out the other. Is there an eye version of that? In one eye? That sounds gross.
I know.
But we all know what we're saying, right? You scroll past it, you don't notice. But something with a little more detail and a little more thought makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. What's interesting is that as we were talking about this, I was thinking, so I just finished my next book. It's gone off of the editor, and it's a book about marketing your book locally. And when I started on this book, and this would be like an interesting story that I would share in social, right? So when I started on this book, I'm like, well, this is going to be a really short book because blah, blah, whatever. Because like, okay, well, bookstores, this. What I loved, so my books are oftentimes, I don't want to say 30,000 foot view, but, like from book to bestseller covers a lot of content.
Yeah.
Right? What was so fun about this book, about putting this book together, is every time I thought I was done, I wasn't, which I know sounds like an author's worst nightmare, but it really wasn't. Because every time I thought, like, I would wake up in the morning and I'd have another idea about marketing locally. And what this really did is this book pushed me as a marketing person to go so deep into the topic of marketing locally. And to me, like if I'm talking about my book or if I'm putting my book out on social, it's an interesting concept, right? When you have like talking about micro learning, and maybe this is only interesting to me, but the idea of going so deep into one singular topic really kind of blew my mind. I got to tell you. So again, I don't know if that's necessarily interesting on social, but to me, like if I'm speaking to, my audience, and I'm talking to them about this journey, because, the Amazon book journey is the Amazon book journey. Like it's basically just, I'm on this running treadmill going 50 miles an hour, trying to keep up with what Amazon's doing.
Right.
Like that story is kind of on repeat all the time. But, to do something like this, like did your book challenge you in a particular way? Right. Mm-hmm. How did it challenge you? Like, what was that like? Because 83% of Americans want to write a book. So I think, I guess in a very long-winded, weird, my typical like weird, disconnected way, what about this book really challenged you? What do you feel? What are you really proud of about this book? Right? What was your inspiration? What was your, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Or am I just like, or do we need to tell the guy who edits our podcast to like take this whole section out because Penny got off the rails?
No, it absolutely makes sense because again, it's that personalization factor. And I'll say it over and over again. Readers, audiences, potential buyers can tell when you're putting in the effort to do something unique, to bring them into your world, to answer their questions. You know what I mean? And so it is those kind of details that say, I'm here for you. I'm committed to this. Like, I'm committed to your experience versus, again, simply saying, buy my book. It's out in 2 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can do some of that, but if you just put that on repeat, you're white noise, you know?
Right. Right.
So,
Exactly.
and I love the other example. And I thought, Penny, this would be totally your jam. Working on a playlist.
Oh,
You know,
love me some
this says to
playlists.
put it on
Yes.
Spotify. Spotify is actually pretty straightforward to use. So for those of you who are like, Spotify, what? It's actually pretty straightforward to use. And it's a really great place for people that actually go looking for very specific kinds of content. But I mean, again, here we are. Be specific, make it seem genuine. You know, this example said, these songs carried me through chapter 10. Because I mean, think of what that says. Like, especially if you've made it very clear you're a thriller author. Like, does that not make you go, I want to know what these songs are and what the hell happens in chapter 10? Like,
Yeah.
why did you need a special playlist to get through it? Like, I want to know all the things.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. I love Amy's absolutely right. I love playlists are my jam. I absolutely do. Um and so I love the idea of releasing a cut scene. Like, I love that idea. I'm a tiny little bit on the fence about this one though, because you know, something that didn't make the final cut. And if as a fiction author, when you're dealing with an editor who's like, I'm cutting 3 chapters or whatever, that always feels painful, but it's also really good content to share with your super fans and stuff. So I'm a little on the fence about that suggestion.
Maybe it could be a really, really short excerpt and saying like, this scene kept me up at night, or this scene, I couldn't go to sleep after writing this scene, or something like that. Maybe
Yeah.
where you're kind of teasing a piece of content, but again, getting personal, getting specific about how it affected you, how it came about, things like that, where again, it's just intriguing to the reader. Like, why? Why was this challenging for you? Or why were you so excited you couldn't sleep after writing this scene or this chapter? That kind of stuff. But it also gives, make it a good one, but it's also such a great way to tease your writing style, which goes a long way, especially for genre fans. And the same thing for, when we're talking about nonfiction, I do think a lot of this is more straightforward for nonfiction. But same thing, like, that could be a teaser for a tip, like give them something to latch on to. Like you said earlier, Penny, that shows, don't do this whole, like, I've got all the answers, but buy my book before you know what I mean? Prove to them that you have the answers. Like, stand behind what you've put in your book by putting some of it out there for people to get early. You know what I mean? To actually judge your expertise on things like that. Like, because if you've written a great book and if you've got a strong point of view, you shouldn't shy away from that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that totally. All right. So the next one, I really want to take the next one because this is so my jam. Book Fairy Drops. I love that title for this segment. And this is based on local. And again, because I just finished my book on local, this is so near and dear to my heart. Postcards. So everybody loves postcards, and everybody loves bookmarks, which it sounds really weird in such a digital age, but I still read print books. I read a combination of print and digital. Postcards, bookmarks. Don't forget your QR code leading to Amazon. Leave them around your town. Leave them in indie cafes. You can even leave them in Starbucks, bulletin boards, libraries. Leave them everywhere. So I met an author years ago, and this was when her book was out, right? So, but she was selling 5,000 copies of her book, or she had sold 5,000 copies, since the launch, which was, I guess, 90 days ago. 5,000 copies of her first independently published romance novel, right? She did it by blanketing her town with postcards and bookmarks. How crazy is that?
I know. I love it.
Right? So, and then, you could also have some fun with it, right? So take a picture of, you could take a picture of it, spot it in the wild, for social media, things like that. Also utilizing little free libraries, right? So you can pop the cards into little free libraries. I really recommend leave them everywhere. Make sure that you have some sort of digital connection. So the QR code should go to Amazon for your pre-order, right? And then you can use some of the ideas that we talked about in this show to kind of whet their appetite for this book, right? So your postcard doesn't have to be just your book cover. Hey, my book's come out, blah, blah. You can make it, we just did a show on elevator pitches, which I think hit last week. If you missed that show, go back to it. Use your elevator pitch on the postcard, make it super interesting and intriguing. It really helps you to start to dig into your local market, because it's very easy to get caught up in, I'm just going to do everything on social and my website, and all of that is great. But don't overlook your local market. I love Book Fairy Drops. Love, 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 love it.
I know. I go into so many local businesses that just literally to support each other have things set up for other small businesses, whether it's on the counter or up on a bulletin board or something like that. So you'd be surprised at how supportive your local community probably is. And I loved your idea of cross promoting between this and online, Penny, and the photo idea, because if you take photos, you also get to share the love with the wherever you dropped your stuff off at, right? So you mentioned a coffee shop. If you take a photo, book spotted in the wild, I love that. You get to tag the coffee shop if they have, an online presence, which probably a lot of them do by now. And you're also giving back to your community in that way. And there's more of that collaborative support,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love it. Okay. You were the Goodreads queen. You want to take the next one?
Oh, yes, Goodreads. So here we go. This one, believe it or not, I don't know if anybody listening knows this, but you can actually set up a Goodreads giveaway before your book officially releases. This even applies if your book is not on Amazon yet, so that is something to consider. So whether your book is officially on Amazon yet or not, Goodreads does let you do giveaways. I'm not going to go into all of that right now. Maybe we need to do a Goodreads show coming up again to revisit, some of the details of this. But what's so great, and we did do a show on this recently, is this, Goodreads giveaways, the new integration. Every time you do a giveaway, anybody who enters gets the book added on their want to read shelf. So not only does Goodreads email them when the book releases, so that's a great reminder, like, hey, this book is out now. But now Amazon also reminds shoppers that they have a book on their Goodreads want to read shelf. So while they are shopping on Amazon, they are going to get a reminder that at one point you were interested in your book on Goodreads. I mean, and that is insanely powerful, because that's like at a reminder at point of purchase. Like, that is wild to me.
Yeah.
So Goodreads giveaways, the value of those really skyrocketed with that integration. And it's really just a great way to also, I keep saying quality over quantity. People are on Goodreads because they are readers, because they are trying to find books, because they want to be in a space with other super fans, with other readers, be able to interact with authors directly. So when we talk about social, I know not everybody's into social, but Goodreads is different in the sense that you know what the audience is. You're not filtering through people that are there for workout tips or for a recipe, or, you know what I mean? Everybody on Goodreads is there for book-centric reasons. So you know that your audience is already living there and hanging out there. So that's why I'm such a big fan of utilizing the Goodreads giveaway feature for sure. It's not something to be overlooked.
Yeah. 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 I agree with that. I think the Goodreads piece of it is super, super helpful. And again, obviously during the brand marketing phase, I know I keep saying that, but you've already gotten on there. So you're kind of got the lay of the land. Don't try to use Goodreads and do pre-promotion at the same time, because that'll kind of
right
crazy.
Exactly.
All right. So I guess the whole point of doing this show was to make all of you all feel seen, right? With when you're saying, oh, I can't do a pre-order, because I don't have, I don't have a base. I don't have any followers. Nobody knows who I am. Pre-orders, and I'm going to steal this line. Amy put it in the show notes because it's fabulous. They aren't about who yells the loudest, but the one who creates the most curiosity and touch points. And I think that's really, we see there's so much content right now in social in particular that's just yelling at us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the content that we resonate with, and not just us here on the show, but I think just as consumers, is the stuff where we feel like, A, we're not being sold, right? So it's not like a direct, like, hey, I'm just so fabulous, buy all the things, sign up for all the things. But also the content that really feels like it gets me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. So I really recommend, don't feel like you have to do everything, right? Pick 2 things, and get started on those and give it a try. I mean, if you heard something during the show that you feel really kind of like, oh my gosh, I can totally do that. Even if it's just, and not just, but even if it's just printing out some postcards and doing some local promotion, great, do that. Like if social media isn't your jam and you're like, oh, that just makes, the whole, like doing something on video even just makes me want to pass out. Fine. You have a lot of, we gave you a lot of options. You have a lot of options. So I'm so glad that we did the show. I think it was an important statement to make. And hopefully, if you have a bunch of books out and you're super famous and you're listening to the show, we're so flattered. But I think that this is really it's a great opportunity for everybody to maybe add some more tools to their toolbox when it comes to the pre-order stuff. So I want to just remind you all, you can talk to us. We're really excited about this. And we've already gotten some, and it's really, really fun. So get on the podcast train with us. Text the word podcast to 888-402-8940. And I want to just remind you, we are really wanting to get to 100 reviews. So this year, so we have a little bit of time left. We're at 99. Very excited about that. I'm really hoping we're going to get to 100 very soon because our listeners are amazing. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.